Alright, been seeing lots of tier list videos. That was the big 2019 meme, so let's update it for 2020 here. Here's the storm. We're gonna do Battlegrounds tier list. So let's just start off with the worst of the worst, Blackheart's Bay. um, this map is really bad because it basically is a PvE map and there's kind of like one way to play it, and it's very non-interactive with your opponents, and basically the team that's ahead should never team fight the other team because they risk losing more coins and things like that. And yeah, lots of people misplay it really badly. So the community understanding of the map isn't very good. So if you randomly get queued into Blackheart's Bay, you can just lose because their team might know how to play the map and your team doesn't. So because it plays differently than every other map and it's non-interactive and doesn't really encourage like team fighting or brawling or whatever or any interaction with your opponents, pretty bad. Blackheart's Bay, I think it's the most in need of a rework, I would say. Next up, I'm going to put let's see, there's SABC. I can't really add a D tier, can I? All right. Well, we'll put these above Blackheart's Bay then, just slightly. So I'm gonna have Haunted Mines and Warhead Junction next. These I would actually probably put in like a D tier kind of thing. So I could take Blackheart's Bay and put it down there maybe. Haunted Mines, I don't think is that bad, and I don't think it needed to be removed. But it also suffered from kind of the same problem where people played the map kind of wrong. The map was mostly based around the camps on the upper side, and you kind of ignored the uh, skull golem dude in the lower side. So if your opponents went down into the lower side, which seems like it's the iconic, like, unique thing of the map, right? That seems like the thing you should focus on. But no, actually just pushing with the sappers and taking those camps on cooldown was generally better, and defending your siege camp and stuff like that. So yeah, Haunted Mines, it's not in the rotation right now, you can't really play it, so I would probably put it in a D tier. I think the map could work. They just kind of need to buff the golem or nerf the sapper camps or something, just to rework the map, and it would be all right. It wouldn't be probably my favorite map, but it would function just fine. Warhead Junction, uh, partly it's just too big, and it plays like too similarly to some of the other big maps, like Garden of Terror or Alteric Pass or Cursed Hollow, for example, um, or Sky Temple. But it's not really. It doesn't really play better than any of them. It kind of just plays worse in almost every way. That it's really not that fun or interesting to play, and it is very frustrating, especially the nukes when they used to do more damage in the center, but it was still better just to target it on hitting as many structures as possible, but people didn't know that, and so they would target the things all wrong, and yeah, trying to get your team to understand and play Warhead Junction pretty decently is very very frustrating, and I don't really like that the map is it's like vertically mirrored instead of like diagonally mirrored, if that makes any sense. So, like both of the bruiser camps are on top lane and both of the siege camps are on bot lane. It's kind of like Sky Temple like that. I generally don't prefer that because it kind of means both teams are going to focus the same lanes at the same time, and then you're just A-rhyming at that point, where you're just like 4v4 against each other or whatever, and you're both going to clear the other camp, and nothing really happens, and it's just kind of this weird stalemate. So I would rather if it's like you can lopside the map and you both want to focus different sides at different times and things like that, depending on where the objectives spawn or what boss you can capture or things like that. So I think that makes for more interesting gameplay. So that's where Warhead Junction is. And let's see. Next, I'm going to put Sky Temple in C tier. Sky Temple, it kind of suffers from the same issue as Blackheart's Bay, where once one team gets ahead on structure damage, from that point on, if they just trade every single double temple phase, they pretty much win the game, because if you have 3 keeps alive or if you have 2 keeps alive and I have 3, by the time like one temple kills one keep, your temple will have killed one keep, my temple kills the second keep, your temple kills the second keep, and then my temple kills your core while your temple is still hitting the keep. So basically, as soon as you're ahead, you never really interact with your opponents, and it's very non-interactive. It doesn't really promote good gameplay, I think, from a map design perspective. Um, Other than that, the map is fine. I think they should probably just change how the temple phases work to prevent that. Like for example, make all 3 temples spawn every single time and just nerf how much each temple does in terms of like structure damage. Because right now, if you take like a full temple in top lane, like at the start of the game, for example, it gets the fort HP, like it kills all the front wall and gets the fort HP to like 66%, something around there, maybe half-ish, maybe 80%, somewhere around that range. If it instead just got like one tower in the wall, or maybe both towers, and no real fort damage, that would be better. And then at least if your team is ahead, you can, like, the non-interactivity would be you take 1 temple, but then you're letting the other team take 2 temples. So it would give the map a bit of a comeback mechanic or something. So I think that would help the map a lot. Or just always have it so that there's always only 1 temple phase to fight over. That could maybe work too, instead of having the double temple phases or something. I don't know. It's kind of awkward. I don't like that there's only one boss, so that you're like, if there's ever a topside temple, either mid or top lane, and then a bottom temple, you always want to prioritize the bottom temple over the other two, because that has the boss lane and double siege camps. So you have like triple the merc pressure. There's no mercs that go mid lane, so it just makes bot lane the focus, and that's very one-dimensional and not that interesting in my opinion. Next up, I'm going to put Garden of Terror, also in C tier. Um, Garden, here's the thing, it's not a bad map, but the problem is it's basically just Cursed Hollow, but worse. So it kind of fulfills the exact, like, you play it pretty much how you would play Cursed Hollow, except instead of having bosses, you just have an extra siege camp. And the bosses are a lot more interesting. Like, you can use Gust, you can use Leyline, you have VP, you have Sanct, you can Holy Ground, you can do all these cool, like, boss stealing plays. There's heroes that have better boss control than others, things like that. If you just have it another siege camp, that's pretty underwhelming and not as interesting, like, strategically, in terms of drafting and how you're going to play the map and things like that. So, like on Garden or on Cursed Hollow, you sometimes will give a tribute in order to take boss, and you just trade them if you're ahead. Like if you have 2 tributes, but it's on their side of the map and they're at 0, you can give that and let them have 1 and take your boss, and like that's a cool strategic, interesting choice you can make. Garden of Terror, it's like you would never want to really like trade a siege camp for a seed. Like that's not really how the map works, and it feels really underwhelming. So Garden of Terror, it's just Cursed Hollow but worse. Yeah, kind of unfortunate. Next up, I'm going to put... this one's kind of a tough choice. I think we'll put Braxis here for now. The best time to play Braxis was when, if you stood on the point, it was immediately contested, and you could just step on for a split second, and it would go down to 50%. Now that you have to stand on it again, I don't know why they reverted that change. It seemed like it was not even in the patch notes from what I saw or remember. It seemed like it just got like reversed randomly. I loved that change, and I think that made the map a lot better because it meant that you would actually fight over the objectives a lot more. And yeah, like now that you need to stand on it for a whole bunch of time, it's a lot less interactive, because unless you know that you can like win a fight super hard to be able to stand on it for like 5 seconds or something, there's not really a point in even fighting it in the first place, and you would rather just like go take camps or just clear the lane or rotate or do something else. So it kind of it disincentivized fighting over the objective point, which I feel like is kind of the whole point of the map. So yeah, that's kind of weird. If they changed that back, I think Braxis would be pretty fun to play again. But alright, I'm gonna actually skip putting any other maps down here, I think, for now. Let me see if I want to change my mind on that. Actually, no. First, I'll put Hanamura in B. I think this map is very close to being good. The problem is the samurai camps are too strong, and the vision camps still give too much XP, I think. If they fix those 2 things, I think the map would be fine. If they just made the samurai dude like as strong as a siege camp or something, or they just made him a boss and made him spawn later, that would also work. The problem is, or they just need to buff the cart as well. That could also work. But the problem is the camps are better than the cart. And so you run into the same problem on like Haunted Mines and Blackheart's Bay, where teams that aren't like in the know will focus the cart and then end up behind against a team that knows to prioritize the camps. And so, like, camps are good. Camps are important on every map. They're probably more important than bosses even, and sometimes as important as objectives. But they shouldn't be like the cart is like the thing of Hanamura Temple. That's what makes it different than some of these other maps, right? Otherwise, if you can just take a turret camp or whatever, then it's just kind of gonna play out similarly to Volskaya or something else. So you should focus the map around the map objective, and then make other things kind of secondary to that, not the other way around. So Hanamura, it's a B for now. The map is good if you have two teams that play it and they're focusing on camps. The map is good and it works fine. Um, but I feel like, yeah, the cart should do more damage. There should be more punishment for just giving up a cart and taking camps in the meantime. And right now, there's not really a punishment for that because the cart does such little siege damage in comparison. And if you just push with the samurai dude, that does like equal, if not more, push pressure. Um, and then you can also take the other camps at the same time and build an XP lead. So that's where I would put Hanamura for now. In S tier, I'm gonna skip and we're just gonna jump right to S tier for now, so that I can compare these other maps against it. First map in S tier is gonna be Infernal Shrines. This map has by far the most variance in macro in all these other maps. So most of these other maps, there's basically a single optimal way to play the map, or maybe two, depending on some other things. Infernal Shrines has basically the most viable ways to play the map. It has lots of different hero variety and draft and things like that, and prioritization you can use. You can play the map a bunch of different ways. I like that the objective is random, whether it spawns mid, top, or bottom, and there's 3 different variations to it, because most of the other maps, like I said, it's either just one way or 2 ways, depending on which way the objective spawns most of the time, or sometimes the objective is just fixed. And so, yeah, I like Infernal Shrines a lot for that reason. It is very interesting in macro. You don't know how you're going to play the map immediately in draft, because you are going to vary it based on where the shrine spawns and which, I guess, element of the Punisher it is. So yeah, thumbs up, Inferno Shrines, great map. It's been one of the most popular maps in amateur leagues. Oh yeah, I should probably have mentioned this at the start, but I'm like a high-ranking player. Like I've been GM multiple seasons. I play in Heroic Division in NGS. I've played in Div, well, technically 1 and 2, but I didn't play Heroes Lounge as much. But I'm also now qualified to play in Div S next season for NA on Team Rewind and things like that. So I'm coming at this with a very like coordinated play, competitive play like perspective. And I am taking Storm League into account, like I've already mentioned, because if you get these maps in Storm League, you don't want to just lose the map based on the other team knowing how to play the map and your team not. Like, I feel like that's generally not very good design, that it just takes control like away from you and you're just going to lose some games because the maps don't play out as they intuitively should, and there's like a secondary unintuitive way to play the map that's actually better. So yeah. Second for me on S tier, we're gonna put Towers of Doom. And maybe this is an A. This is like a very borderline A pick. Towers of Doom, it's been a favorite staple map in competitive games. You can basically always come back on this map. On most of these other maps, by winning an objective, you get a map advantage. Like, you get structure damage, you get map control, you build map advantage, and that's kind of it's like a snowball built into the game. Towers of Doom doesn't have that. You can be at 1 shot, or you can be at 40 health on your core, and the map is the exact same, basically. You don't really gain map advantage from winning the objectives, and so it has the most comeback potential, and is kind of like the least snowbally. It's not the least snowbally of all the maps, and the one downside I will say is that there is one optimal way to play it, which is just to focus the bottom lane, because it gives you control of the bottom shrine, and it has 2 of the sapper camps that you can control, and compared to top lane, which just has the 1, and the boss isn't enough to counteract it. And if you just trade the top 2 shrines and you have 5 shots and they have 3, if you just do that twice, you get a free 4-shot altar, basically. And then anything on top of that is a big bonus. So it is unfortunate that you just focus the bottom lane. And so some heroes that are really good at sieging bottom lane just kind of become the focus of the map and things like that. So it's a little bit less interesting because of that. It's not quite my favorite map, but it is up there. It is a community favorite. And yeah, just the way the map objective is designed, it's very close to being good. I think they could tweak around the camps and the design of the altars maybe or something to to make it even better, but as it is now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, and it's solid. So, next up, um, I'm gonna put Terrapass, and this is also a very borderline S or A tier to me. I'm gonna put it in A. Partly that's because I don't think other people really agree that it's an S tier map, but for example, if you read the macro primer that Zainhide just put out today, actually, on Terrapass, this map is also very similar to Infernal Shrines. There's a bunch of different ways to play the map. It has a bunch of different viable heroes that most of the other maps don't. Like, heroes that aren't viable anywhere else are really viable on Terrapass, just because the way the map works. It is kind of snowbally. If you play the map well, it can be snowbally. I don't like that the camps are so safe to take and they're not interactive. Like, camp invades pretty much never happen on this map, and I think that's kind of a bad design. I think a camp should be not really a risk, but it should be something that your opponent can potentially fight over and use as a comeback mechanic back into the game, and that doesn't really exist on here. I don't like that the bosses are so weak, and that the null camp is so strong by comparison, especially with like Merc Lord talents, things like that. So it's not the best map, it's not perfect, but it is very good, and it's one of my favorites. So Terrapass is going to be up there for me. Let's see, what's next? Let's go with, I'm gonna put Skaia in B, next to Hanamura. Kind of similar problems to Hanamura and some of these other maps that I've mentioned. There is pretty much one way to play the map, and you get the turret camp first, then you get your siege camp at 2 minutes and 20 seconds, so you cap it by 2 minutes and 45 seconds. That pushes while you're doing the objectives. You take a second turret once it gets stalled. One team wins the objective, they're going to push top lane to get the well, which sets up for the second objective, which then goes bottom lane to get the bottom lane well, and then by the bottom lane, you're generally around level 20, and you can push bottom lane for bottom keep, if not ending the game. And that's where like 90% of Volskaya games function. And so it is kind of snowbally. It is very one-dimensional. There's not a whole lot of comeback mechanics or ways that you can play the map differently or uniquely. It's fine, like the map works, it's just not anything special that makes me want to like really study the map and figure out stuff, because it's already been figured out and it's very clear that there's not much else that you can really do. And it also suffers from the same problem. If the other team gets their camp early on and your team doesn't get your turret camp at 1 minute, then you're just kind of very behind immediately from the start. And yeah, it's frustrating when your team doesn't know what to do. So, let's see. 4 maps remaining. Where would I put these, and which one to focus on next? Let's go Cursed Hollow. I'm gonna say Cursed Hollow is actually S tier. It's a very basic map, especially compared to some of the other MOBA maps. It's kind of like, it's where you used to play first as a new player for a bunch of games and things like that. I'm not sure if they still do that, but it has kind of been figured out, and it is like it's kind of basic, but it's good at what it does. It's what you would expect out of Cursed Hollow. I like the bosses on this map. I like the tributes and the curse. I feel like it's a good objective. This would be, actually, I'm gonna move it down to A. It's not quite an S tier map. There's nothing that makes me go like, wow, this map is great. It's amazing. It's just kind of like, it's about ballpark par standard for what I expect a good map to be, and it doesn't really exceed that, but there's not really any problems inherently with it. Getting camps is kind of the main thing, but that's mostly teams not really thinking, I feel like. Like, there is a very clear way that you should take the camps in their early game especially, and it's mostly just people being not very good at the game or not like thinking critically about what they're doing to take the camps at the right time. Like on Hanamura, for example, you'll see teams try and take the samurai camp first and not take the turret. And then you'll have maybe one guy go take the turret, and then you can't push as 4 people with the samurai. You want to take the turret first and then take the samurai so that you can push, and you have a turret on the push as well to push with the samurai as 4 people. So it's little things like that that kind of like people do camps in backwards orders, or they'll take them at the wrong time, and that kind of just it puts a little bit of a sour note on things, but otherwise not too bad. Let's see. I'm also going to put Battlefield of Eternity in A tier. I like that it's a very different map from most of the other ones, and you have the race heroes that are much better. You'll see Artanis on Battlefield of Eternity. You pretty much won't see him like almost anywhere else. You see Volugo Q build. You see these unique builds and unique heroes on Battlefield that you don't really see on the other maps, and I think that's cool, and I like it strategically interesting. But it is kind of snowbally, and if your team falls behind, it can be pretty frustrating because you're just going to lose the next Immortal, and then the Immortal after that, and then maybe they're going to end the game on the Immortal after that, and it is kind of snowbally. There's not a whole lot you can do picking the other camps. I don't like how sort of safe the Bruiser camps are. They're not nearly as bad on something like Terrapass, but I think if you swapped like the Impaler camp and the Bruiser camp, maybe that would be more interesting. So that the stronger camp was in more of a neutral position, that maybe the team that's behind can try and fight over those and build an advantage that way, or something like that. But overall, not a bad map, and it has some positives and some negatives, so I would put that in about A. Alright, 2 more to go. Let's see. Tomb of the Spider Queen, I'm going to put in B. It's pretty close to being an A map. I don't like that there's not really much interesting you can do with the camps. The Bruiser camp is on too long of a respawn to do middle, and you only have the one siege camp bottom, but you would rather prioritize middle and top, since that's where the boss lane is, and mid gives you the most like map control. So yeah, it's not super interesting. It's pretty much just, you just wave clear and control vision and poke around the objectives, and then you try and like double cap and get 2 turn-ins back to back and stuff like that. And it is kind of snowbally as well, so it's kind of just boring. It's kind of just wave clear. Yeah, it's not that interesting. I really think they could add more camps or something and spice it up, or just have the camps on lower cooldowns so that you could use them to push with more often, or do something. I don't know. I don't know what I would change to make Spider Queen better, but it's just okay. It's like slightly below average, I would say, but it's not bad. It doesn't really have glaring fundamental issues that some of the other maps do. It's just kind of boring and not that interesting. Alright, last map, I'm going to put Shire in A. It does have a little bit of problems with the camps that if you take them at the wrong times and things like that, you can get your team really behind, and then it is kind of snowbally. But it also does have a fair amount of comeback potential. I like that, for example, on Skaia and Shire, the vehicles count as heroes, so you have certain like giant killer talents can be really good against them, or things like that. Shire does have the kind of the unique benefits of Braxis also, where you have the point control objectives, and if you only control one of 3 lanes basically, as long as it's the bottom of the top lane, you don't really need to worry about the objective, and it's more so focused around the camps, and I think that's kind of interesting. It means some solo laners have different matchups. Like Rexxar is pretty good on Shire, for example. You'll have Chen or Yrel or Malthael or Thrall or, whatever. You have all these different offlane matchups that kind of change when they're based around a point rather than just setting up for the main objective on something like Infernal Shrines. So, aside from the snowbally, it is kind of an unfortunate part of the map, but otherwise, it's like a solid map, and there's not really too many glaring problems with it. It's just kind of, it's good. It's roughly about where I would put Cursed Hollow, where it doesn't have a whole lot of super big high points, but it doesn't really have any glaring issues or negatives. And so it's just about par. I would say Cursed Hollow and Shire are about the par for where I would want most other maps to be. Battlefield and Terrapass have a little bit more highs, but a little bit lower lows. Most of the B maps have just a little bit too many issues to really have me fall in love with them. The C maps have kind of the fundamental issues. The F maps are like they need a complete redesign or like really drastic changes, and then the S maps are like almost perfect as they are, maybe need tiny little tweaks, and they don't really need to be changed very much, and they're already very good. So yeah, that's about where I would put all of these maps. Yeah, cool. That's about all I got. Let me know if you disagree. I'm sure you will. Hopefully maybe some other people will. I saw Noobkex put out a video that's kind of my inspiration for wanting to make this one. I couldn't find quite his list maker thing, but I found a different one here. So yeah, cool. Thank y'all for watching.